Hi, my name's Kathleen, and for most of my life, I thought being quiet meant being kind. But then I heard my sister say, "She's a pushover. He won't do anything." She said it while emptying my savings, while smiling across the dinner table like nothing had happened. And my mom, she didn't stop her. She just nodded, like betrayal was part of the family tradition. They forged my name, sold my father's house, called me dramatic for asking where my inheritance went. So I stopped asking, and I started proving. Now I have the documents, the video, the receipts. But the question I still hear in my head is this: when did my silence become their permission? I had imagined the return differently. I thought maybe nostalgia would hit me like a warm wave. Coffee in the kitchen, the scratch of Dad's slippers on the hardwood, the clock ticking from the hallway like it always had. Instead, everything felt thinner, like the walls remembered, but they didn't welcome me anymore. It was late afternoon when I arrived. 2 bags, 1 backpack, and my laptop slung over my shoulder. I let myself in with the same brass key I'd used since high school. The door stuck for a second, weather warped, but I pushed through, the way I always had. My childhood bedroom was untouched. Same curtains, same desk lamp, same floral comforter from when I was 15. I dropped my bags next to the dresser and stared at the bookshelf, still holding my yearbooks like frozen artifacts. I didn't unpack right away. Instead, I walked to the kitchen for something simple: tea, maybe a moment alone. That's when I heard it. "She's a pushover, Mom," Callista said, her voice clear through the half-closed pocket door between the kitchen and dining room. "I mean, I took over her savings 2 years ago. She didn't even flinch." There was a light chuckle. "Mom. Well, she's always been soft-hearted." I froze in front of the open fridge. The sound of the teapot bubbling over was the only thing that masked the way my breath caught. My body was still, but something in me cracked wide open. Funny, isn't it? How the people who gave you your voice are the first ones to smother it. I stepped into the room a moment later, tea forgotten. Neither of them looked up. I didn't interrupt. I sat at the far end of the table, opposite their world, and watched. Callista kept chatting about the party she was planning for Mom's birthday. Venue details, seating charts, caterers. My name wasn't mentioned. I memorized every glance, every word. I knew better than to play shocked. People always show who they are when they think you're not looking. That night, I worked from the dining room table. Dad was already in bed, and Mom was watching something too loud in the living room. I had bills pulled up on one screen: overdue property taxes, maintenance estimates. I'd handled most of it for years from Portland. Quietly, consistently, without fuss. I heard Callista's voice drift in from the kitchen, soft but smug. She was on the phone. "Don't worry, she won't do anything. She never does." I didn't move. I didn't shout. But something in me tilted. Back in my room, I pulled up a draft email I hadn't touched since 2020. The subject line still read, "Joint Account Transfer Request." I had never sent it. I'd let it slide, like I always did, like they always knew I would. The cursor blinked at me, impatient. Not this time. I sat back, stared at the familiar ceiling above my old bed, and whispered the words as I typed them into the subject line. Let me reintroduce myself. I didn't sleep much that night. After typing those 5 words, I lay in the dark for hours, the ceiling above me unfamiliar, despite the thousands of nights I had stared at it growing up. The house wasn't silent. The old pipes hummed, the furnace creaked, but it was the silence in the walls that felt loudest. Not a comfortable hush, but the kind that came when no one was waiting for you to speak. The morning sun filtered through the blinds in long, angled lines across the carpet. I rolled over, checked my phone. No group messages, no missed calls, just a weather alert for possible thunderstorms and a calendar reminder: Mom's birthday, 65. I wandered into the kitchen, hoping for some coffee and maybe a hint of normalcy. What I got instead was a front-row seat to a performance already in motion. Callista and Mom were huddled at the table, flipping through a binder. I caught pieces of their conversation between the clink of coffee cups and page turns. I confirmed the florist, Callista said, and the menu's set. Just need to finalize the seating. Oh, good, Mom replied. Your Aunt Ruth is picky about chairs. Already handled. I'm putting her next to Margaret. Neither of them looked up when I entered. I poured myself a cup and leaned against the counter, invisible but present. Do we have the RSVP list printed yet? Callista asked. It's on the table, Mom answered, gesturing vaguely. I looked down. A stack of formal invitations lay there, heavy cardstock, gold lettering, hosted by Callista in bold script. I flipped through them slowly, pretending to admire the design. One caught my eye. Family dinner, formal seating, it read. The names listed below, everyone. Cousins, in-laws, neighbors. But not me. I cleared my throat lightly. Hey! I didn't see my name on this. Callista blinked once, then smiled like it was a customer service interaction. It's probably just a printing thing. Mom waved a hand. Well, you're here anyway. You don't need an invite, do you? I bit back the response that climbed into my throat. Even guests get invitations. I'm family, and I didn't. That moment sat with me all day, clinging to the corners of my thoughts like humidity before a storm. I didn't mention it again. I didn't want their explanations, not when I already knew the truth. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was a quiet reorganization of the family narrative, one that had less and less space for me in it. That evening, they were in the living room, setting up a slideshow for the party. Old family photos flickered on the screen. Birthdays, vacations, anniversaries. I watched from the hallway. My face was there sometimes, but always in the background, half-blocked, cropped. I slipped into the dining room to send a few files I had promised a client. I reached for the Wi-Fi settings. Incorrect password. I tried again, then again. I walked into the living room. Hey, did the Wi-Fi change? Oh, Callista updated it, Mom said, not looking away from the screen. She didn't send it to you? I turned to Callista. She smirked. Must have slipped my mind. I nodded slowly. You don't forget passwords. You exclude people from them. There was a brief silence. Callista turned her attention back to the screen. Mom tapped a photo and said, That one. Crop your father's cane out. Back in my room, I turned off the Wi-Fi on my phone and tethered to my mobile data. My laptop screen flickered to life. I opened the shared family folders, something I hadn't touched in months. I scrolled through the financials, grocery logs, bill scans, repair invoices. And there it was. A withdrawal dated 5 months ago. Large. Unfamiliar. From the joint account I had helped set up. I sat back, rubbed my temples, and stared at the number. It wasn't just about a dinner or a password. This was about visibility, ownership, voice. I pulled out a sticky note from the drawer, wrote 2 names, Callista, joint account, then underneath, pattern. I folded the note and slipped it into the back of my planner. They've erased me from the social spaces. Let's see how far it goes. Morning brought little clarity, just a gray, overcast sky that pressed against the windows like an unspoken warning. I made coffee before anyone else was up. It wasn't peace I was looking for, just a head start. A moment to think before the day started scripting me out again. I sat at the dining room table with my laptop, organizing documents for my freelance taxes. Receipts, client invoices, random notes scribbled on the back of grocery lists. That's when I saw it, tucked between old bank statements. A yellow sticky note, the kind I'd used years ago to keep track of informal agreements that didn't need to get ugly. It read, in my handwriting, Loan to Callista, $4,800, roof repair, paid back in 3 months. Below that, her signature. The date was nearly 3 years ago. My chest tightened, not from the money, but from the clarity. I pulled up my online banking history and filtered for any transfer from her account to mine. Nothing. Not a dime. At dinner that evening, I didn't plan a scene. I waited until the plates were cleared and the hum of post-meal fatigue settled over the table. "Callista," I said calmly, "do you remember that loan for the roof?" She didn't miss a beat. "What loan?" "The one for 4,800. You signed a note, said you'd repay me within 3 months." She let out a laugh, light but sharp. "Kathleen, are you keeping tabs now? We're family." Mom chimed in, her tone soft but firm. "Please don't start dividing us over money. That's not how we raised you girls." I stared at my plate for a moment. My voice didn't waver. "You divided me with silence, long before I ever asked for what's fair." Neither responded. Callista went back to her wine. Mom adjusted her napkin like it was the real problem in the room. The next morning, I wandered the hallway with a coffee mug and too many thoughts. That's when I noticed the family photo hanging near the stairs. The one from Thanksgiving 2 years ago. Everyone in their festive sweaters, smiling around the dinner table. Something felt off. I stepped closer. I wasn't in it. I remembered that day clearly. I had flown in early. I wore a navy blue dress with a cardigan Mom said made me look too serious. I even helped set the table. But here, in the frame, I was gone. I found Mom folding towels in the laundry room. "That's the Thanksgiving photo from 2021, right?" I asked, holding it up. She glanced at it. "Yes, I think so." "I was there." She paused. "Well, you were sitting in the back. The lighting was poor. Callista had it cropped." I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to argue. I walked back to my room and laid the photo next to the loan note. 2 pieces of paper, one financial, one visual, both saying the same thing. You don't exist. I pulled out a box from under my bed. Inside, an old corkboard I used for planning design layouts. I pinned the loan note, a printed copy of the photo, and a screenshot of the shared account withdrawal from the week before. In red marker, I wrote across the top, "What else have they erased?" Then I reached for the old file cabinet in the corner, one that still had a label from my father's workshop. I pulled open the drawer labeled Dad, Legal, and flipped through the folders. There were contracts, old wills, business licenses. My name appeared once on a form dated back to college. That's when it hit me. If they could edit me out of photos, how far would they go in documents? I sat back in the chair, stared at the board, now covered with fragments of exclusion. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even about the dinner or the password. This was about inheritance, not of things, but of place, of presence, of legacy. And I wasn't about to let them erase that too. I sat at the kitchen table, a legal pad open in front of me, lines crisscrossed with names, dates, small arrows connecting incidents that once felt isolated. Not anymore. I was done pretending these were coincidences. I wasn't imagining the silence, the exclusions, the disappearances. They weren't just failing to include me. They were designing a world without me in it. The alert came through while I was pouring coffee. A text from Melissa, my childhood friend, who now worked at the local print shop on High Street. We hadn't spoken in months, not really. Just the occasional like or comment on a post. Her message was simple. "Hey, weird question. Was that your sister at our place last week? She was printing some trust documents with your mom. Just assumed you already saw them." "No, Melissa, I hadn't." I texted back, asking if she still had a copy. She responded 5 minutes later, with a PDF and a follow-up. I probably shouldn't, but it felt wrong. I opened the file on my laptop. It was a family trust layout, financial distributions, asset listings, co-signatures. Kathleen did not appear, not once. Not even in the witness field. I didn't cry. I just read it again, slower this time. Every asset was accounted for. The house, Dad's small business shares, even the old cabin in Logan we barely used. Split between Callista and something labeled Legacy Family Fund. It was a sterilized version of our family, one where I had never been born. That evening, after dinner, I asked Mom casually, my voice steady, "Hey, did you and Callista put together a trust recently?" She blinked at me like I had asked if we were out of milk. "We didn't want to stress you, honey. You've always been the sensitive one. I held her gaze. And you've always assumed silence means consent. Her lips pressed into a thin line. No apology, no denial. From the living room, Callista's voice cut through the quiet. Why are you making drama out of a family decision? If we'd thought you'd care, we'd have told you. I turned to face her. If you thought I'd care? Or if you thought I'd object? Mom exhaled sharply, like she was swatting a fly. Can't you just let this go? Don't make this a big thing. There it was, the pivot, their shield. Make me the unreasonable one. Paint me as unstable so no one would question why I wasn't on the paper. I stood up. My chair didn't scrape. I didn't slam anything. I just picked up my keys, grabbed my tote, and walked out the door. 20 minutes later, I was at the county recorder's office, the fluorescent lights washing over rows of aging file drawers and scanned indexes. I signed in, waited, requested access to the most recent filings under my father's name. The clerk returned after a few minutes with a printout and an eyebrow raised. It was updated 3 months ago, she said. Callista A., co-owner. I didn't flinch, just thanked her, folded the paper, and left. Back in my car, engine idling, I stared at the name on the page. My father's and then hers. Not mine. I pulled up my contacts and scrolled until I found the one name I hadn't needed in years. Diane Rowan. We'd worked on a zoning consultation together once. I remembered she specialized in estate law. The phone rang twice before she picked up. Diane, it's Kathleen. I have a question. Go ahead. What happens when a family makes legal changes behind your back? Alters ownership? Removes your name from things you once co-managed? There was a pause. Then her voice, measured, deliberate. You might be looking at misrepresentation, maybe even fraud. I need to understand how far a family can go before it becomes legal fraud. Then bring everything you've got, she said. Let's talk. The hotel ballroom was modest, carpeted in navy with gold trim, and smelled faintly of catered chicken and burned coffee. Round tables with white linens filled the space, each centered with floral arrangements I'd helped carry in earlier that afternoon. My name wasn't on the program, not that I expected it to be. I wasn't even sure I was meant to be there. Mom turned 65 that day, and Callista had planned the event with the fervor of a corporate launch. Everything had her touch. The slideshow, the printed menus, the custom napkins with Mom's initials in cursive gold. I stood near the back wall, nursing a watered-down soda and watching people I hadn't seen in years greet each other like cast members at a reunion I hadn't been invited to. As dinner began, Callista took the microphone. Her voice was polished, rehearsed. Tonight, we celebrate a woman who raised 2 strong daughters, one with grit, one with grace. She smiled like a politician. Mom, you taught us how to lead with love, and for that, we thank you. There was applause. She gestured to her fiancé, who stood and took the mic like it had been choreographed. I waited for my cue. Kathleen, would you like to say a few words? It never came. I rose from my chair anyway, note card in hand, and stepped quietly toward the front. The event coordinator intercepted me. Sorry, she whispered, lips tight. We're running behind. The schedule's full. I stood there for a moment, unsure whether to speak or sit back down. I caught my mother's eyes. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She just looked away. I turned and walked back to my seat. The card in my hand crinkled slightly. I folded it in half and slid it into my clutch. Later, as the room buzzed with mingling guests, I stood near the buffet line and spotted Aunt Janice. She was pouring herself a cup of coffee. I wasn't just left out, I said softly as I approached. I was erased. And they think that's okay, because I don't raise my voice. Her eyes widened. I thought it was strange you didn't speak. They said you were traveling, that you weren't feeling well. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Isn't it funny how my absence is always more convenient than my presence? Janice didn't reply. She just touched my arm lightly, then looked away. The final straw came when I passed the corner table near the dessert spread. Callista stood there with her fiancé and two of his business partners. I only caught part of the conversation. "That's my sister," she was saying. "She's kind of a creative soul, works online, lives at home, just kind of drifts." One of the men chuckled. "So, like an artist with a family plan?" Callista laughed. "Exactly! A freeloader with decent Wi-Fi." I stood behind a hydrangea centerpiece I had helped unpack, my breath caught in my throat. Not shock, just confirmation. I walked across the room, deliberate but calm, and stood beside my mother at the cake table. A group of guests hovered nearby, with paper plates and plastic forks. "I paid for this venue," I said clearly, just loud enough to carry beyond our little circle. "Quiet doesn't mean powerless. You've mistaken my silence for surrender." The noise around us died a little. Someone dropped a fork. My mother's face went rigid. She didn't respond. I turned and walked away before the silence got filled again. Later that night, back at the house, I texted Diane. "It's time. I want to know what happens if I challenge an illegal co-ownership transfer on family property." Her reply came 10 minutes later. "Let's talk Monday. Bring everything." By the time the sun came up, I was already halfway through printing documents. The printer hummed steadily in the corner of my childhood room, somehow louder than I remembered, and spit out page after page, emails, screenshots, bank activity, legal filings, photos. I'd never felt more like a stranger in my own house than I did surrounded by proof that my family had chosen to function without me. The house was quiet. Mom and Callista had gone out for brunch, leaving behind their usual trail of empty coffee cups and a stack of glossy magazines. Dad was still asleep. I peeked into his room, expecting to find him curled beneath the same plaid blanket, his TV playing at low volume like white noise. But instead, what caught my eye was the briefcase on the floor. His old one, the one we weren't allowed to touch growing up. It was unlatched. Something in me hesitated. Then I stepped forward and opened it. Inside were folders arranged with the kind of precision only Dad could manage, manila envelopes labeled with years, insurance policies, tax returns. At the bottom, I found one marked, "Power of Attorney, Initial Copy." I pulled it out, heart already bracing. There it was. My name, in black ink, unmistakable, not Callista's. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or sick, maybe both. Just then, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A new email. Subject line, "Regarding the signature logistics, keep Kathleen unaware." It was a thread. A group email, and someone had mistakenly left my name CC'd. I tapped it open with fingers that had gone cold. Callista. "If she finds out about the transfer and asks questions, we'll say Dad gave verbal consent." Mom. "Don't forget to clear the drawer files after. The last thing we need is her digging again." My vision blurred, but not from tears. From rage so sharp it almost felt clinical. They knew. This wasn't accidental. They were plotting my erasure like it was just another weekend chore. I forwarded the entire email chain to Diane without a word, then sat on the bed, holding the copy of the Power of Attorney like a shield. No more guessing, no more doubt. Around noon, the phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Hi, this is Franklin Medical Pharmacy. We're calling about Mr. Whitaker's prescription refill. Insurance flagged the claim. It's no longer covered." "What do you mean?" I asked, already opening the banking app. "Well," the voice said, "looks like a change in the listed account holder. We can't release the medication without a new payment method." I logged in, tried to transfer money from the shared family account. Access denied. I blinked, tried again. Same result. Switched apps, logged into my own savings. Balance, 243.89. That's when I saw it. The line item, ACHE transfer, Callista A, $9,800. 3 months ago. No permission, no discussion, just gone. My jaw clenched. I wasn't even sure how my legs carried me to the kitchen, but a minute later, I was on speaker with the bank. The representative explained that the withdrawal was authorized through the old joint account I'd opened with Callista in college, one I'd forgotten even existed. "You're listed as co-owner," the rep said. I was. And I never removed her. I hung up, sat down, and stared at the floor. I gave them the keys, and they used them to lock me out. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. It was about identity, legally, financially, emotionally. They had stripped me down to a ghost in my own lineage. I called Diane. "I have email proof of intent. I have legal documents with my name, and I have $243 to my name." Her voice didn't miss a beat. "That's more than enough. Monday, we begin." Monday morning came colder than I expected. A kind of crisp that sank into your fingertips, no matter how tightly you gripped the steering wheel. I pulled into a metered space outside Diane's office and sat there for a full minute, watching the city wake up through my windshield. My laptop bag sat in the passenger seat like a co-pilot. Inside, scanned evidence, timelines, and truths I could no longer afford to swallow. Diane's office was a 2-story brick building tucked between a dry cleaner and a tax prep service. The waiting room smelled faintly of paper and lemon cleaner. She met me at the door with a firm nod and no small talk. That's what I appreciated about her. We spread everything out on her desk: printouts of the email chain, a copy of the power of attorney, account records, the hospital bill that bounced. Her eyes moved fast. "This isn't just betrayal," she said after 20 minutes. "This is potential criminal misrepresentation." I didn't nod. I already knew. But hearing it aloud reset something in me. This wasn't about family anymore. It was about facts. She opened her legal pad. "Step 1. We place a legal freeze on all property-related transfers involving your father's name. No one moves anything without court approval." I exhaled slowly. Not relief, not yet, but forward. That evening, I stopped by the house to pick up a box of old books. My name was still on the mailbox, but it felt like a misprint now. The place was quiet. I let myself in with the key that had once symbolized something bigger than access. On the dining table sat a binder labeled Holiday Coordination, wide open. Curiosity overrode my exhaustion. I flipped through the tabs. A color-coded spreadsheet stared back at me. Lists of gifts, budgets, delivery dates. My row was there, but my name wasn't. Under Kathleen, someone had typed, "Non-participant, unreliable." I took a picture with my phone, closed the binder, and walked out without saying a word. That night, I posted the photo on my social media with a simple caption: "Sometimes the holiday spirit skips the house you were born in." No hashtags, no elaboration. The likes started coming in within minutes. Quiet affirmations from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old neighbors, former coworkers, a few women from my grief group. The next morning, I texted Tessa, my best friend since 5th grade. She hadn't commented, hadn't liked the post. I invited her to dinner. Hours passed. Finally, a reply. "Hey, it's not a good time. Callista said you were going through something and maybe I shouldn't get involved." I stared at the screen, reread it 3 times. That's how quick it happened. One sentence and decades of friendship diluted into suggestion and avoidance. So now they don't just control the money. They control the narrative. I didn't text back. Instead, I emailed Diane to file a formal notice of dispute with probate court. We weren't just contesting a will anymore. We were tracing a pattern. I asked her to file a discovery request. I want to see every document my name was removed from. They've built an image of me, an unreliable, drifting inconvenience. I was going to dismantle it piece by piece. Later that night, I was brushing my teeth when my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice, low and steady. "You think you're being clever. Just wait until you lose more than money." Click. I stared at the screen. No name, no voicemail. But the voice, it was my mother. I sat on the edge of my bed, the phone still in my hand, the words echoing long after the line had gone dead. It was one thing to be manipulated in silence. It was another to be threatened. That voice wasn't angry. It wasn't panicked. It was calculated, like I was a liability that needed quieting. Just wait until you lose more than money. I didn't sleep. I didn't cry. I opened my laptop and started a checklist. File for court injunction. Request motion to freeze assets. Scan additional documentation. At 6:45 a.m., I left for Diane's office. The probate office was sterile and too bright, tucked behind the county clerk's office. Diane had already submitted our motion. We sat across from a clerk in a navy sweater vest who barely looked up while stamping papers. "Once this is filed," Diane said, "they can't move anything involving your dad's name until a hearing. No property sales, no account closures, no silent revisions." I nodded. This isn't about revenge. It's about record correction. We left the building without a word. That afternoon, back at the house, a courier rang the doorbell. I opened the door and signed for a thick envelope labeled Estate Coordination Consent. It sounded official, professional, clean. Inside, I found a waiver. Buried in the legalese was a single clause. The undersigned voluntarily waives all rights to joint ownership or future claim to estate-related assets, properties, and obligations. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just called Diane. "They sent me a waiver," I said, dressed up as consent. Diane's voice came through steady. "It's an old trick. You caught it in time. That's more than most." I took out a red pen, scrawled "refuse to sign" across the bottom, scanned it, and emailed it back to both Diane and the probate clerk. Then I poured myself a glass of water and sat in the quiet house, the only sound the old grandfather clock ticking from the living room. I spent the rest of the day digging through my father's belongings, chasing a memory, a flash drive. He used to carry it on a keychain clipped to his belt, always protective of it, even after his stroke. After he moved to part-time care, the keys were tossed in a kitchen drawer. I'd seen them, but never thought to check. It took hours, but I found them, buried under expired coupons and loose batteries. The flash drive still worked. That night, sitting at my desk with the lights off, I plugged it in. A video autoplayed. My father sat at his desk in the old house, his hair darker, posture more confident. He looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, it means I couldn't protect you when I should have. Kathleen, I never changed the power of attorney. It's yours. And the house. It should be yours too. If they try to take that from you, they're doing it against everything I intended." He paused, exhaled. "I'm sorry I didn't say this while I had more time, but I trust you'll know what to do." He ended with a date, a signature, and the camera shook slightly as he turned it off. I sat in the dark for a long while, not because I was overwhelmed, but because it confirmed everything. He knew. He had seen what I couldn't admit. That in this house, truth was a currency they only spent when it served them. I uploaded the video to a private cloud and emailed Diane. I have visual testimony and original dates to match. Then I created a new folder on my desktop and named it Truth, Not Revenge. It was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving I'd been right. Before I could talk myself out of it, I logged into the family's shared community page. Callista still had admin access, but I knew the password. I posted the video clip, just a minute long. My father's voice, his eyes, his clarity. The caption underneath was simple. Dad never changed it, and now, neither will I. Then I hit post. By morning, the post had already circulated far beyond what I expected. Messages trickled in while I was still in bed. First, a few quiet hearts from distant relatives, then a handful of private messages from old friends, all echoing the same note. I had no idea. But what struck hardest were the voicemails. 3 from Callista. The first was clipped and forced. "You need to take that video down. You've made your point." The second had softened. "You're hurting Mom, Kathleen. This isn't how we handle things in this family." And the third, dropped just after sunrise, was cold. "You've gone too far. You're going to regret this." There was no apology, just layered threats dressed in guilt and performative concern. Around mid-morning, a text buzzed from Aunt Teresa. I saw the clip. I had no idea. You were always quiet. Now I understand why. It stopped me. Not because she said something new, but because she finally saw it. People confuse silence for indifference. They never consider it might be survival. An hour later, I was in Diane's office. She waved me in without a word and handed me a printed email. It came through on discovery, she said. The email had been sent from Callista's address to the probate office, dated 3 weeks prior. Kathleen has reconsidered. No need to proceed with her involvement. Let's move forward on our end. I stared at the paper. She had spoken for me, signed my name with the weight of familiarity. I'd never seen the message, never authorized a thing. I looked up. What does this mean legally? It means she impersonated you in a legal context. If the court believes it was intentional, we're now dealing with fraud. I nodded. Reinstate my status. Today. We already did. Your name is back on the docket. Back at home, I pulled the video back up. Not to watch it, just to feel the quiet it left behind. Dad's voice, so steady, had become a kind of armor. They didn't just try to take the house, I whispered. They tried to take my voice, my choices, my identity. That evening, after dinner, I was looking for an old photograph in the hallway cabinet when I stumbled on something I didn't expect. A manila envelope marked Appraisal 2006. Inside was a folded slip. Item: Hamilton wristwatch owner, Kathleen Whitaker. Status: sold. Private dealer. Invoice: Callista A. It was the watch Dad gave me on my 18th birthday. He told me, every woman needs something that tells time and holds memory. I hadn't seen it in years. Just assumed it had been misplaced during his move. I walked into the kitchen. Mom was rinsing dishes. You sold the Hamilton, I said, holding the paper. She turned slightly. It was just sitting there. Your sister thought it should go to someone who appreciated it. No apology. No acknowledgement. I folded the slip, put it in my pocket, and walked out. That night, I called the dealer listed on the invoice. Spoke to a man named Ron, who confirmed the transaction. No proof of ownership had been provided, he said. Just a name, a signature, and confidence. Would you like to file a theft report? He asked. Yes, I said. I would. I didn't tremble. I didn't pace. I opened the folder titled Truth Not Revenge on my desktop and added 2 new documents, the appraisal slip and the police report. Then I opened my personal social media, wrote a 1-line post, and hit share. You told the world I was nothing. I'm showing them receipts. The post sat online like a lit match in a dry field. At first, just a flicker, a few reactions, a couple of quiet comments. Then it spread. Not viral in a celebrity sense, but enough. Enough to stir the family tree and shake loose a few truths. People started sharing. Women I hadn't spoken to in years sent messages. Thank you for saying it. I thought it was just me. I see you. Strangers weighed in too, echoing what I never dared put in words. Being erased doesn't always happen in silence. It's often orchestrated with a smile and a signature. Mom didn't speak to me, not even a look. Callista, ever theatrical, sent a cease and desist letter. It arrived via a local firm in an envelope thicker than necessary, as if weight alone could make it feel legitimate. Diane reviewed it and scoffed. You're in the clear. They started the cover-up. You're defending the truth. I believed her. 2 days later, a certified envelope arrived. Handwritten return address. Mason Whitaker, Cincinnati. Uncle Mason, Dad's younger brother, retired CPA. We'd only spoken occasionally, but he had always been kind, the type to send birthday cards with underlined Bible verses. Inside the envelope was a folded letter and a copy of Dad's original will, dated 5 years prior, before his stroke, before Callista started taking over. In the document, my name was listed clearly as the sole inheritor of the house, the family trust, and any residual assets. Near the bottom, in Dad's own handwriting, was a scribbled note, undated, unnotarized, crossing me out. The ink looked rushed, unsteady. Mason's letter was short. Kathleen, I never felt good about the changes that happened after your dad got sick. I kept this because something told me one day you might need it. I think that day is now. I called Diane. She filed an immediate petition to validate the earlier version, citing undue influence and lack of legal witnessing on the handwritten revision. When I hung up, I felt something strange. Not victory. Not even relief. Just stillness. I wasn't trying to win anymore. I was trying to restore. They fought me with stories, I murmured to myself. I countered with signatures. That weekend, I attended a church potluck with an old friend from college. It had nothing to do with my family. Or so I thought. Near the potato salad, I heard Callista talking to someone. "Oh, this?" she said, holding up her hand. "Dad gave me the family ring when I graduated. It was symbolic, you know. Firstborn, tradition." I didn't approach immediately, just watched from across the table. That ring, it was mine. Dad had it resized for me when I was 16, a thin gold band with our initials, and the phrase he used to say when tucking me in, "Keep your name safe." Later, I walked up to the woman she'd been talking to and smiled gently. "I heard you asking about the ring. Just so you know, I had it resized when I was 16. It was kept in Dad's drawer because it was mine." She looked surprised. "She said you gave it to her years ago." I shrugged, calm. That's what people say when they need a story more than a truth. On Sunday morning, I posted two things: a scanned copy of the original will, stamped, notarized, and an appraisal slip for the ring dated in my name. The caption? Symbolism is only powerful when it's based on something real. On Monday afternoon, I got an email from Diane. Subject: Court date confirmed. The judge had reviewed our filings and moved the case forward. I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking below the formal wording. Then I said it aloud to no one but myself, my voice steady. "Let them speak. Now I speak back." I woke before the alarm. Not from nerves, but from clarity. The kind of calm that settles in your bones when there's nothing left to guess about. The fight wasn't over, but it had changed shape. It was no longer about proving I belonged. It was about making sure the record remembered that I had. I made coffee in my own kitchen. My apartment wasn't large, just enough space for quiet and light, but it was mine. No echoes of someone else's expectations. I laid everything out on the table. Printed emails, bank records, notarized documents, video transcripts, and now a police report. I placed my father's journal at the top of the stack. Diane texted me as I zipped up the portfolio. "Judge may ask about mediation. You can say no." I typed back without hesitation. "They've had my silence long enough. I'll use my words now." As I pulled out of the parking lot, my cousin Erin's name lit up my phone. I answered on speaker. "I found something," she said. It was in one of Dad's old workshop boxes, labeled "Keep if she ever needs it." She sent me photos, a handwritten journal in Dad's uneven print. The cover said simply, "Kathleen." By the time I parked outside the courthouse, the entire file was in my inbox. I read it slowly, parked under the shade of an oak tree. The last entry hit hardest. Kathleen was the only one who never asked me for anything, and maybe because of that, she's the one who deserves the most. Another line, a few pages earlier. If they cut her out, it won't be because of me, but because of how they saw her silence as weakness. I didn't cry from sadness. I cried because I'd been seen, because he knew, because he had tried, in his own quiet way, to leave a trail back to truth. Inside the courthouse, the room was small, barely 30 seats, gray carpet, no gallery. Diane stood beside me. Across the aisle, Callista sat straight-backed in a navy suit. Our mother sat next to her, looking everywhere but at me. The judge took his seat, flipped through our file, and paused at the journal excerpt I'd submitted as part of our statement. "Ms. Whitaker," he said, looking at me over his glasses. Are you here to reclaim something tangible? Property, account access, or something else? I stood. I'm here so the truth is no longer a whisper in someone else's hallway. There was no sound in the room for a full beat. Then the judge nodded and continued. The proceedings weren't dramatic. Legal confirmation, statement entries, scheduled hearings. No one yelled, no one cried. But everything that needed to be said had already been spoken in quiet, deliberate actions. Outside, under a pale blue sky, Callista approached. You know, she began, her voice lighter than I expected. I never hated you, I just didn't think you'd fight. I met her gaze. Not hard, not cruel, just real. You were right, I said. I didn't. Until it was no longer about me. I walked away before she could answer. Some things didn't need replies. In the car, I opened my phone. The post I'd scheduled with Dad's journal quote had gone live. It had already been shared over 200 times. Comments poured in, words like brave, finally, and thank you repeated again and again. I read the caption aloud to myself as I pulled out of the lot, the road stretching wide ahead. I didn't need them to say sorry. I just needed to remember who I was. 3 days passed before Diane called. The judge signed off. She said, straight to the point. The will stands. Your name remains. They can't undo it now. No fanfare, no courtroom drama, just quiet confirmation. Property title, inheritance, power of attorney, all reinstated. This time, with legal weight no one could rewrite with pen and charm. I stood by the kitchen window in my apartment, holding the phone to my ear, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. Justice didn't roar, I said softly, almost to myself. It arrived quietly, with signatures, not shouting. The next morning, I drove back to the house one final time. Not to pack, not to argue, just to end things right. The air inside was stale, like something had held its breath too long. I didn't knock. The key still fit, even if I no longer did. I walked through the living room. No one was home. The silence was oddly generous. I placed a sealed envelope on the kitchen table, addressed simply, to whoever still believes. Inside, I had tucked 3 things. A printed copy of Dad's original will, a USB with the confession video, and a note in my handwriting. This house never belonged to me, but it built me, and that's all I ever needed. I didn't take photos or linger. I walked through the rooms one last time, passing the couch where Dad used to fall asleep with the news on, the hallway of family photos where I was always off to the side, and finally the garage, dusty and echoing with memory. There, I found one last thing worth keeping, a small strip of wood, part of the old cabinet Dad used to measure our heights. Mine was the last line carved, dated June 1997. He'd written my name in block letters beneath it. I tucked the piece into my bag. He saw me, I whispered. That's enough. 2 weeks later, I moved into a cabin upstate, small, warm, surrounded by pines. I used part of the inheritance to open a workshop for women in transition, divorce, grief, silence, survival. We didn't talk about pain as spectacle. We talked about rebuilding, about naming things. A month after we launched, a podcast host picked up my story. The Woman Who Refused to Disappear, they called the episode. Listens poured in. So did messages. Not from reporters, but from people. Real people. You told the story I was too scared to, one woman wrote. Another, I thought silence was safer. Thank you for showing me it isn't always. 6 months later, a birthday card arrived in the mail. No return address. Just a pastel cover with a printed message inside. Thinking of you. No signature. I knew who it was from. I didn't respond. Not out of anger, but because I no longer needed to. I didn't block them. I didn't reach out. I just stopped waiting. Closure wasn't when they admitted they were wrong. It was when I stopped asking them to. One Saturday, I stood in front of a group of women in our little gathering room. We were painting. Someone had brought brownies. Another woman cried while trying to describe what it felt like to be invisible in her own family. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't rehearse. I just said, "They thought silence meant surrender, but some of us were just gathering strength."